Hi, my name is Dr. Ava Hale. If you look me up online right now, you'll probably see my face plastered all over the news, usually next to a headline that uses words like scandal, betrayal, or justice, depending on which paper you're reading. But before the cameras, before the police investigations, and before the chaos that erupted in that ballroom, I was just a daughter sitting at a table, clutching a glass of lukewarm water, trying to stop my hands from shaking. I'm writing this because I need you to understand that what happened wasn't an impulse. It wasn't a tantrum. It was a demolition. And to understand the demolition, you have to understand the foundation. Let me take you back to that night. It was the statewide education gala. Imagine the kind of event where the air conditioning is set too high, the chandeliers are trying too hard to be elegant, and everyone is wearing a smile that costs more than their suit. There were about 300 people packed into the room, local politicians, school board members, wealthy donors, and the press. The air smelled like expensive perfume and roast chicken. At the center of it all was the man of the hour, Richard Hale. My father, to the world. He was a legendary school principal. He was the guy who turned failing schools around, the disciplinarian with a heart of gold, the man who wrote books on tough love education. And tonight, he was receiving the highest honor they could give him, the Protector of Children Award. The irony of that title felt like a physical blow to my gut every time the MC said it over the microphone that I watched him walk up to the podium. He looked exactly the way he always did, impeccable. His suit was tailored perfectly to his frame, his silver hair was combed back without a single strand out of place, and he had that look in his eyes that made you want to stand up straighter. It was a look that demanded respect. He gripped the sides of the podium, looked out at the sea of admiring faces, and then his eyes landed on me. He smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was a proprietary smile. The kind of smile a collector gives a rare artifact he's managed to keep in mint condition. "Thank you," he said, his voice booming with that practiced, charismatic baritone that had silenced auditoriums for 40 years. "This award isn't just for me. It is for the philosophy that discipline is the highest form of love. And if you need proof that my methods work, you only need to look at my daughter, Dr. Ava Hale, sitting right there." The spotlight swung toward me. 300 pairs of eyes followed it. The applause was polite, rhythmic, and suffocating. "She is a renowned child psychologist," my father continued, gesturing toward me with an open hand. "She is the living testament to my parenting. She is strong, she is successful, and she is proof that when you hold a child to the highest standards, they soar." I forced the corners of my mouth up. It's a trick I learned when I was very young. If you smile, they don't look closely at your eyes. Inside, my heart was hammering against my ribs, so hard I thought the person next to me might hear it. He was using me just like he always had. He was wrapping his abuse in the shiny packaging of my success. He was taking credit for my survival. The MC took the microphone back and said, "We would love to hear a few words from Dr. Hale later in the program." I nodded. Oh, they would hear a few words from me. They would hear a lot more than that. But as I sat there, gripping my clutch bag which contained a USB drive that weighed practically nothing but felt like it carried the weight of 20 years of trauma, I realized something. This story doesn't start here. It doesn't start with the applause or the award or the fancy gala. If I start here, you'll think this is just a story about a family squabble or a daughter with a grudge. To understand why I did what I did, we have to go back to when I was 7 years old. That was the year I learned what a perfect shell really costs. I remember the day vividly.
It was a Tuesday.
I know it was a Tuesday because that was the day we had math quizzes in 2nd grade. I was a good student. No, I was an excellent student. I had to be. In the Hale household, anything less than perfection wasn't just a disappointment. It was a moral failing. I had missed one question. Just one. It was a subtraction problem. I had written 4 instead of 5. A simple, childish error. When I got home, I put the test paper on the kitchen counter, my stomach churning with that specific nausea that only children of tyrants know, and my father came home at 5:30 p.m. sharp. He always did. He hung up his coat, walked to the counter, and picked up the paper. He didn't yell. My father never yelled. Yelling was for people who lost control, and Richard Hale never lost control. He just looked at the paper, then looked at me. "Ava," he said softly. "Come with me." He led me down the hallway. We didn't go to my bedroom. We went to the small storage closet under the stairs. It was a tiny space, smelling of dust and old winter coats. He opened the door and pointed inside.
"You know the rules," he said.
"Mistakes mean you aren't focusing. If you aren't focusing, you need to remove distractions." "Daddy, please," I whispered. I didn't cry. Crying was also considered a loss of discipline. "I won't do it again."
"I know you won't," he said.
"This will help you remember." He ushered me inside. The space was so small I couldn't fully stand up. I had to curl my legs against my chest. Then he closed the door. The sound of the lock clicking into place was the loudest sound in the world. Click, that sound. That mechanical, decisive snap of metal sliding into metal. It signaled the end of my world and the beginning of the void. The darkness was absolute. There was no crack of light under the door because he had installed weather stripping specifically to block it out. "Think about your potential, Ava," he said from the other side of the door. And then I heard his footsteps walking away and I sat there in the pitch black. I was 7 years old. I was terrified of the dark, of spiders, of monsters, all the normal things kids are scared of. But mostly, I was scared that he would forget me. I sat there for hours. My legs went numb. I needed to use the bathroom. I was thirsty. But I didn't make a sound. I knew that if I knocked or screamed, the time would reset. That was the rule. Wrong equals isolation. Sometime later, it felt like days, but was probably 3 or 4 hours, I heard footsteps again. Not his. Lighter ones. "Mom," I whispered. I heard her breathing on the other side of the door. My mother. She was a quiet woman, always fading into the background, like a piece of furniture that had been in the sun too long. She knew I was in there. She had to know. She was in the kitchen when he led me away. "Mom, let me out," I breathed, pressing my cheek against the cold wood. Silence. Then, the soft sound of her slippers shuffling away. She didn't open the door. She didn't argue with him. She was his accomplice, not because she was cruel, but because she was passive. Her silence was the mortar that held the bricks of his tyranny together. She had learned, just like I was learning, that to survive Richard Hale, you had to make yourself invisible. You had to follow the program. When he finally let me out, it was past my bedtime.
He didn't hug me.
He didn't ask if I was okay. He simply handed me the math worksheet again.
"Correct it," he said.
I corrected it. I wrote the number 5. My hand was shaking so hard the pencil lead snapped, but I didn't stop. The next day, he drove me to school. As we walked toward the entrance, other parents waved at him. Teachers stopped to shake his hand. "Good morning, Mr. Hale." "Richard, thank you so much for that advice on handling the budget." "Mr. Hale, you're a saint for what you do for these kids." He was the protector. He was the pillar of the community. Everyone looked at him with such admiration. And I stood there, holding his hand, feeling like an imposter in my own life. They saw a hero. I saw the man who controlled the darkness. This pattern continued for years. It wasn't just about grades. Did I spill milk? The closet. Did I speak out of turn? The closet. Did I forget to fold my laundry exactly the way he liked? The closet. It became a routine. He built a perfect, disciplined soldier out of a frightened little girl. By the time I was 18, I had perfected the art of being Ava Hale, the daughter of the great Richard Hale. I was valedictorian. I was captain of the debate team. I was accepted into an Ivy League university. "See," he told a local newspaper when they did a profile on our family before I left for college. "She is a success because I never let her settle for mediocrity. I provided the structure she needed." Structure. That's what he called the trauma that I left for college, and I didn't look back. I became a psychologist, specifically focusing on childhood trauma and abuse. I wanted to understand what had happened to me. I wanted to fix it. I wanted to be the person who opened the door, not the one who locked it. I cut off contact with him for 9 years. I didn't call on birthdays. I didn't go home for Christmas. I ghosted my own father. It was the only way I could breathe. I built the life. I became Dr. Ava Hale. I helped kids who had been beaten, neglected, and broken, but even with the silence between us, he was still there. He was still giving interviews. He was still telling the world that his daughter was a success because of him, not in spite of him. He spun my silence as me being busy saving the world, using my career as another trophy on his shelf. I thought I had escaped. I really did. I thought the closet was just a memory, a scar that had healed over. I thought I was the only one. God, I was so naive that I was sitting in my office about 3 months ago when the email came through. That was the inciting incident, the moment the ground fell out from under me. The subject line was blank. The sender was an anonymous address, just a string of random numbers and letters. My finger hovered over the delete button. As a therapist, I get a lot of spam and sometimes some very disturbed messages. But something made me open it. The body of the email was just one sentence. Mr. Hale locked me in the storage room when I was in 4th grade. My blood ran cold. I stared at the screen, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat. The storage room, not a room. The room, attached to the email, was an audio file. My hands were trembling as I clicked play. The sound that filled my office was the sound of my nightmares. Click, the sound of a heavy lock sliding into place. Then a voice. His voice. Younger, but unmistakably him. You'll stay in there until you're ready to be a part of civil society again. Silence creates character. Then, the sound of a child sobbing. Did I rip my headphones off and threw them onto my desk? I couldn't breathe. I spun my chair around and stared out the window at the city skyline, gasping for air. It wasn't just me. That was the thought that shattered my world. For decades, I had carried this shame alone. I thought I was the special project. I thought I was the only one he disciplined this way because I was his daughter. I thought his cruelty was reserved for family, but this audio file, this was from a student. A 4th grader. I replied to the email immediately.
Who are you? Please, talk to me.
I'm listening. 2 hours later, I got a reply. It wasn't just one person. The sender had been collecting stories. They knew who I was. They knew I was a therapist. They knew who my father was. Over the next week, the floodgates opened. I didn't just get one testimony. I got 23. I sat in my office late into the night, reading through documents that detailed a system of abuse that spanned 20 years. It was a factory of trauma. The pattern was identical in every single story. The location, the old archives room in the school basement, or the equipment shed near the gym. The method, locked from the outside. The environment, total darkness. The justification, discipline. He had been doing this to other people's children. He had been doing this while he was being celebrated as an Educator of the Year. He had been doing this while sitting on the state board for child welfare, and the worst part? He was still doing it. That I knew then that I couldn't just stay estranged. I couldn't just be the daughter who walked away. I had to go back. I had to face him. I printed out the emails. I put the audio files on my phone. And I drove to the house I hadn't stepped foot in for nearly a decade. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked exactly the same. The lawn was manicured to within an inch of its life. The windows were gleaming. It was the picture of suburban perfection. The perfect shell. I knocked on the door. He opened it. He was wearing a cardigan, looking like a grandfather from a TV commercial. Ava, he said, not looking surprised, just expectant. I knew you'd come around. Finally realized you owe your old man a visit. We need to talk, I said, my voice cold. I walked past him into the living room. It smelled of lemon polish and old lies. I didn't sit down. I threw the folder of printed emails onto the coffee table. What is this? He asked, picking it up with 2 fingers, as if it were dirty. It's the truth, I said. It's the kids you locked in the dark. It's the abuse, Dad. He laughed. A short, dismissive bark of a laugh. He didn't even open the folder. He just tossed it back onto the table. Abuse, he scoffed. Is that what they call discipline these days? You psychologists are ruining this country. Raising a generation of soft, whining brats. You locked children in closets, Dad. For hours. Without food. Without bathrooms. I gave them structure, he shouted, his face suddenly reddening. I taught them consequences. And look at them. I bet half of them are successful now because they learned to fear failure. They're in therapy. I yelled back. They have nightmares. They have claustrophobia. You didn't teach them. You traumatized them.
He stepped closer to me.
He was shorter than I remembered, but he still knew how to take up space. He used his height, his voice, his authority to try and shrink me back down to that 7-year-old girl. This was his gaslighting technique. Make me doubt reality. Make me feel small. You're hysterical, Ava, he said, his voice dropping to that dangerous, quiet register. You always were. Too emotional. I should have kept you in there longer. The air left the room. He had admitted it. He didn't care. I'm going to the board, I said. I'm going to the police. He smiled that cold, shark-like smile. Go ahead, he said. Who are they going to believe? Dr. Ava Hale, the estranged daughter with daddy issues? Or Richard Hale, the pillar of the community, the man about to receive the Protector of Children award? I have the school board in my pocket. I have the mayor on speed dial. I have the press eating out of my hand. He leaned in close, so close I could smell his coffee breath. If you try to destroy me, Ava, I will destroy you. I will ruin your practice. I will paint you as a mentally unstable, ungrateful child who is lashing out. I will bury you. I looked at him, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of him. I was disgusted by him. We'll see, I said as I walked out. I was shaking, but not from fear. From rage. He thought he had won. He thought the system he built, the system of power and influence, would protect him. And honestly, for a moment I thought he might be right. He was powerful. He was beloved. But then, the turning point happened. The turning point wasn't a sudden explosion. It was a quiet, digital ping on my phone at 2:00 a.m. After that confrontation in his living room, I had spent 3 days in a state of paralysis. I was terrified. You have to understand, Richard Hale wasn't just a principal. He was an institution. He had been shaping the minds of the community's youth for 40 years. The mayor had been his student. The police chief's son was currently in his honors program. My father had built a fortress of goodwill around himself, brick by brick, student by student. When he threatened to destroy me, it wasn't an idle threat. He had the connections to strip my license, ruin my reputation, and paint me as the unhinged daughter of a saint. I sat in my apartment, staring at the folder of emails I had printed out, those 23 stories of darkness and isolation. I felt helpless. I thought about going to the police, but without hard physical evidence, it would be his word against the memories of former students, many of whom were now adults with their own struggles. He would spin it. He would say they were troubled kids he had tried to help, and this was their way of lashing out. He was a master of the narrative, but then the email came. It was Tuesday morning, the week before the gala. I was awake, unable to sleep, scrolling through my inbox. A new message appeared. The subject line was, "Please help me." I opened it. It wasn't from an adult looking back on their trauma. The grammar was simple, the sentences short and panicked. Dr. Hale, my name is Chloe. I'm 9 years old. I found your website because my mom was looking at it for my brother. I need to tell someone. Principal Hale put me in the bad room last week because I lost my library book.
It was so dark.
I promise I'll find the book. Please don't let him put me back in there. He said if I tell my mom, I'll have to stay in there all night next time. I'm scared. I stopped breathing. The air in my room suddenly felt too thin. Last week, this wasn't ancient history. This wasn't a cold case. This was happening now. There was a 9-year-old girl named Chloe out there, terrified of the dark, thinking she deserved to be locked away because she misplaced a library book. The rage that filled me then was different from the anger I had felt before. Before, I was angry for myself. Now, I was furious for her. That little girl was me. She was every version of me that had cried in that closet. And he was doing it again. He was still the protector, and he was still the monster. I replied immediately, telling her she was brave, that it wasn't her fault, and that she needed to show this email to her mother right away. But I knew I couldn't just wait for a parent to navigate the bureaucracy of the school board. The school board was his turf. If Chloe's mom complained, he would charm her, gaslight her, or intimidate her into silence, just like he had done with my mother. I needed undeniable proof. I needed something that couldn't be spun, couldn't be explained away as tough love. I spent the next 48 hours in a fever state. I reached out to the anonymous sender who had first contacted me, the one who had collected the initial testimonies. We met in a diner 3 towns over, far away from my father's sphere of influence. The sender turned out to be a man named David. He was 30 years old, a mechanic with grease under his fingernails and a haunted look in his eyes. He didn't look like the kind of person my father would associate with success. He locked me in for 6 hours because I had muddy shoes, David told me, stirring his coffee without drinking it. I was 10. I peed my pants in there because he wouldn't let me out. When he finally opened the door, he made me clean it up while he watched. He called it learning respect for property. David slid a USB drive across the table. "I've been waiting for someone like you," he said. "Someone with a name people recognize. I'm just a mechanic. No one listens to me.
But you?
You're Dr. Ava Hale. You're his masterpiece." "I'm not his masterpiece," I said, taking the drive. "I'm his failure. And that's going to be his downfall." On the drive, David had something I didn't expect. He had photos. He had worked as a janitor at the school for a brief period 2 years ago, just so he could get back into that building. He had snapped pictures of the room. It wasn't just a closet. It had been modified. There was a heavy-duty deadbolt on the outside. The ventilation grate had been covered with cardboard to block out light. There was a bucket in the corner. A bucket. My father, the man receiving the Protector of Children award, was forcing elementary school students to use a bucket in a pitch-black room.
"There's one more thing," David said.
"The audio file I sent you? I have the full recording. It's not just him yelling. It's worse." I listened to it in my car after David left. It was a recording from a cell phone that a student had managed to smuggle in about 5 years ago. It captured the moment my father locked the door. But it also captured what he said afterwards, muttering to himself in the hallway.
"Weak.
They are all so weak. Breaks them every time. Just like Ava." He had used my name. He used my trauma as the benchmark for his torture of other children. I drove home with a USB drive burning a hole in my pocket. I had the evidence. I had the testimonies. I had the photos. Now I had to decide how to use them. My original plan had been to go to the police. But as I drove past the huge billboard on the highway announcing the statewide education gala, honoring Richard Hale, I realized the police weren't enough. An investigation would be quiet. It would be sealed because it involved minors. He would hire expensive lawyers. He would retire with medical issues and disappear into a comfortable sunset, his reputation intact. No, that wasn't justice. Justice needed to be as public as the lie he had been living. He wanted a spotlight? I would give him one. The gala was in 2 days. I RSVP'd yes. The preparation was grueling. I had to act normal. I had to pretend that our fight hadn't happened, or at least that I had been cowed by his threats. I sent him a brief text. "I'll be there. You win. I don't want to ruin my career." He replied instantly. "Good girl. I knew you were smart. Wear something appropriate. Good girl." The condescension made my skin crawl. He thought he had broken me again. He thought I was back in the closet, terrified of the dark. He didn't realize that I had learned to see in the dark. The day of the gala arrived. I spent the morning reviewing the files on the USB drive. I organized them into a presentation. I wasn't just going to speak, I was going to show them. I contacted the AV technician for the event venue. His name was Marcus, a young guy I had gone to high school with. I told him I wanted to prepare a special surprise tribute for my father. "Oh, that's so sweet, Ava," Marcus had said over the phone. "He's going to love that. Just send me the file, and I'll cue it up to play when you give the signal." "Thanks, Marcus," I said. "Whatever you do, don't play it beforehand." I wanted to be a genuine surprise for him. Locked and loaded, he promised, and I put on my dress. It was a deep navy blue, high-necked, severe. It wasn't a celebration dress, it was armor. I pulled my hair back tight. I looked in the mirror and saw my father's eyes staring back at me. We had the same eyes. But where his were cold, mine were burning. I drove to the venue. The parking lot was full of luxury cars. The press was already there, cameras flashing as local dignitaries arrived. I took a deep breath, grabbed my clutch with the backup drive, and stepped out of the car. The ballroom was magnificent, a testament to how much money and power my father had courted over the years. Gold streamers, round tables with white linens, a massive stage with a podium that looked like a pulpit. And everywhere, posters of his face. Richard Hale, 40 years of excellence. I walked in, and the air conditioner hit me, smelling of lilies and roasted meat. Ava. I turned to see my mother. She looked fragile in a silver gown that seemed to hang off her bones. She hurried over to me, her eyes darting around nervously. "You came," she whispered, grabbing my arm. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "He was worried you wouldn't show. He's been agitated." "I'm here, Mom," I said. "I wouldn't miss it." She looked at me closely, searching my face for signs of rebellion. "Please, Ava, just smile tonight. Just let him have this. He's worked so hard for this image." "His image," I repeated. "That's what matters, right?" "It's our life," she hissed, her voice dropping. "Don't cause a scene. He loves you in his own way." "Does he?" I asked. "Did he love me when he locked me under the stairs? Did he love you when he made you ignore my crying?" She flinched as if I had slapped her. That was a long time ago. We don't talk about that. We're going to talk about it tonight, Mom." Before she could respond, the crowd parted. He was coming. Richard Hale moved through the room like a king, shaking hands, clapping men on the back, kissing women on the cheek. He spotted us and beamed. It was a performance. Everything was a performance. "There are my girls," he boomed. The people around us smiled, cooing at the sight of the happy family. He walked up and placed a heavy hand on my shoulder. To anyone else, it looked like a fatherly embrace. To me, it felt like a restraint. "I'm glad you came to your senses," he whispered in my ear, his voice low and menacing while his smile remained fixed for the photographers. "One wrong move tonight, Ava, and I make that phone call to the licensing board. Do you understand?" I looked him in the eye. "I understand perfectly, Dad." "Good." He patted my cheek. "Now go sit down. You're at table 1. Front and center. I want everyone to see you clapping when I accept this award." I walked to the table. Table 1. The VIP table. I sat down next to the mayor and the superintendent of schools. They nodded at me politely. "Your father is a great man," the superintendent said, buttering a roll. "We're lucky to have him." "Yes," I said, placing my clutch on the table. "You really have no idea what he's capable of." The lights dimmed. The program began. I sat through an hour of speeches. Teachers praised his leadership. Former students, the successful ones, the ones who had never seen the inside of the archive room, told stories about how his firm guidance had changed their lives. It was a parade of lies. Every compliment felt like a physical blow. I kept thinking of Chloe, the 9-year-old girl. I kept thinking of David, peeing his pants in the dark. And then, it was time. The MC, a local news anchor with perfect teeth, took the stage. "And now," he announced, "the moment we've all been waiting for. The recipient of the statewide Protector of Children Award. Please welcome Mr. Richard Hale." The room exploded. 300 people stood up. The applause was deafening. My father walked up the steps to the stage, bathing in the adoration. He shook the MC's hand, took the heavy crystal trophy, and stood at the podium. He waited for the silence. He loved the silence.
"Thank you," he began.
"This award, it means everything to me. Because protecting children isn't just about keeping them safe from the world. It's about protecting them from their own worst impulses. It's about discipline. It's about structure." He looked down at me. "My daughter, Dr. Ava Hale, is here tonight. She knows better than anyone the value of that structure." He paused for effect. "Ava, would you join me up here?" I'd love for you to say a few words. This was it. He was inviting me up to seal his victory. He wanted me to be the final prop in his stage play. He thought he had me checkmated. He thought fear would keep my mouth shut. I stood up. My legs felt heavy, but my mind was crystal clear. I picked up my clutch. I walked up the stairs. The spotlight was blinding, but I stood next to him. He put his arm around my waist, squeezing tight. A warning squeeze. Just a few words, he muttered through his teeth. Keep it sweet. I stepped to the microphone. I looked out at the audience. I saw the mayor. I saw my mother, her face pale. I saw the cameras, the red lights indicating they were recording live. Thank you, Dad, I said. My voice didn't shake. My father is right. He believes in structure. He believes in discipline. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small remote clicker I had synced with the AV system earlier. But there is something he forgot to mention about his methods. I continued. Something that the protector of children should probably explain. I turned to look at him. His smile faltered. He saw the remote in my hand. Confusion flickered in his eyes, followed quickly by panic. Ava, he warned. Don't. He believes in silence, I said into the microphone. So, let's listen to the silence he creates. I clicked the remote. The giant projection screen behind us, which had been displaying a photo of my father smiling with a group of graduates, suddenly went black. And then, the sound filled the ballroom. Click, the unmistakable, heavy sound of a deadbolt sliding home. The room went deadly silent. The audience looked confused. Was this part of the speech? Then the audio of the crying started. It wasn't me. It was the recording of the fourth grader. The raw, guttural sobbing of a terrified child begging to be let out. Please. It's dark. I'm sorry. I won't do it again. Mr. Hale, please. My father's grip on my waist tightened painfully. Turn it off, he hissed. Turn it off now. He lunged for the podium to grab the microphone, but I stepped back. That is the sound of my father's discipline, I said, my voice rising over the sound of the sobbing recording. And that isn't me. That is a student from this district, one of 23 victims who have come forward. I clicked the remote again. A photo appeared on the massive screen. It was the photo David had taken. The dark room, the bucket, the blackened vents. Gasps rippled through the crowd. I heard a glass shatter somewhere in the back. What are you doing? My father shouted, forgetting the microphone, forgetting the audience. You are insane. She's lying. She's mentally unstable. This room is in the basement of the elementary school, I said, addressing the audience directly. It has no light. It has no ventilation. And just last week, a 9-year-old girl named Chloe was locked inside it for losing a library book. My father grabbed my arm, trying to physically pull me away from the podium. Security. Get her off the stage. She's having a breakdown. But the audience wasn't looking at me. They were looking at the screen. I clicked the remote one more time. Text appeared. It was a scrolling list of names and dates. Michael, grade 4 to 6 hours. Sarah, grade 5, overnight. David, grade 4 to 5 hours. Ava, grade 2 to 4 hours. I am not having a breakdown, Dad, I said, pulling my arm free from his grasp. I looked at him, and for the first time, he looked small. The giant screen behind him, displaying the evidence of his cruelty, dwarfed him. I am finally telling the truth. A woman in the third row stood up. She was trembling. She was staring at the screen. That's my son's name, she screamed. Her voice cut through the tension like a knife. Michael. He told me he was kept after school for detention. You locked him in a closet? Chaos erupted. The noise in the ballroom wasn't a roar. It was a fracture. It was the sound of a carefully constructed reality shattering into a million jagged pieces after that mother screamed, "That's my son's name." The silence that my father loved so much was gone forever. It was replaced by a chaotic symphony of confusion and rage. People were standing up, chairs scraping loudly against the floor. The press, who had been drowsily snapping photos of a standard award ceremony, suddenly smelled blood. Flashbulbs started popping like fireworks, but this time, They weren't capturing a moment of glory. They were capturing a crime scene. My father was still gripping the podium, his knuckles white. He looked like a captain trying to steer a ship that had already split in half. "Please," he bellowed into the microphone, his voice cracking. "Please, everyone, settle down. This is a misunderstanding. My daughter is unwell. She has been struggling with mental health issues for years. This is a fabrication." He pointed a shaking finger at me. "Ava, stop this. You are ruining everything. You are killing me." I didn't step back. I didn't flinch. I looked him dead in the eye, my voice amplified by the microphone that he had invited me to use. "No, Dad," I said. "I'm not killing you. I'm protecting them." I hit the spacebar on the laptop connected to the podium. The screen changed again. This time, it wasn't a list of names. It was a video. It was a video testimony from David the mechanic. He looked straight into the camera, his eyes red-rimmed. "My name is David. When I was 10, Richard Hale locked me in a closet for 6 hours because I had muddy shoes. I was terrified. I had an accident in there, and he made me clean it up. He told me I was trash. He told me no one would believe me." The video cut to another face. A young woman. "My name is Sarah. He kept me overnight. My parents thought I was at a sleepover. He told them I was helping with a school project. I slept on the concrete floor." My father lunged at me. He actually lunged. The protector of children raised his hand to strike his daughter in front of 300 witnesses, but he never made contact. The police chief, whose son was in my father's honors program, had been sitting in the front row. He was on the stage in 2 seconds. He grabbed my father's wrist midair. The look on the chief's face wasn't admiration anymore. It was pure, unadulterated horror. "Richard," the chief said, his voice low but audible. "Don't arrest her," my father screamed, struggling against the chief's grip. "She's hacking the system. This is slander." "We need to talk, Richard," the chief said. "Now." 2 uniformed officers came up the stairs. They didn't handcuff him immediately. He was still too powerful for that public humiliation right then and there. But they flanked him. They escorted him off the stage. The man who had walked up those stairs a hero was now being marched down them like a prisoner. As they let him pass me, he stopped. He looked at me with a mixture of hatred and confusion that I will never forget. He couldn't process it. In his mind, he was the good guy. In his mind, he was the victim of an ungrateful daughter. "Why?" he whispered. "Because Chloe is 9, I said. "And she's afraid of the dark." He was led away. The room descended into anarchy. Parents were shouting, demanding answers. The superintendent was hiding in the green room. The reporters were swarming me, shoving microphones in my face. "Dr. Hale, is it true? How long have you known? Are you pressing charges?" I didn't answer them. I walked down the stairs and went straight to my mother. She was still sitting at table 1, staring at the empty stage. She looked like a statue made of ash. "Mom," I said gently. She looked up at me. Her eyes were empty. "He worked so hard," she whispered. 40 years, Ava. 40 years. He hurt children, Mom," I said. "He hurt me." She flinched, and for the first time in my life, I saw the crack in her denial. She looked at the giant screen, which was still frozen on Sarah's face. She looked at the mother who was still crying 3 tables away. I thought it stopped," she said, her voice barely a breath. "He promised me it stopped with you." And there it was. The admission. She knew. She had always known. She had traded my safety and the safety of all those other children for the comfort of her life, for the prestige of being Mrs. Richard Hale. "It never stops," I said. "Not until someone stops it." I turned and walked out of the ballroom. I didn't look back. I walked out into the cool night air, took a deep breath, and finally, for the first time in 20 years, I didn't feel the weight of the closet on my shoulders. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal proceedings and media frenzy. The story went national. The protector predator, the headlines read. It was sensational, gruesome, and everywhere, but the real work wasn't in the headlines. It was in the investigation. Once the police had the probable cause from my public display, they obtained a warrant for the school. They found the room. It was exactly as David had described. They found the bucket. They found the deadbolt. But they found more than that. They found a logbook. My father, in his arrogance and his obsession with data, had kept a record. He called it the behavioral correction log. It had dates. It had times. It had names. It went back 25 years. There weren't 23 victims. There were over 100. The perfect shell of our family life was dismantled brick by brick. My mother moved out of the house 3 days after the gala. She couldn't handle the reporters camped on the lawn. Or maybe she couldn't handle the ghosts in the hallways. She moved to a small condo in a different state. We talk sometimes, but it's strained. She's trying to rewrite her history, to convince herself she was a victim too. Maybe she was. But she was also an accomplice. My father was denied bail. The judge, a woman who had once attended a seminar of his, looked at the logbook and declared him a danger to the community. 6 months after the gala, I went to see him. He was being held in a county detention center while awaiting trial. The lawyers were trying to plead insanity or early-onset dementia, anything to avoid the truth. But I knew he wasn't crazy. He was calculating. I sat in the visitation room. It was cold, smelling of bleach and despair. When the guard brought him in, I almost didn't recognize him. The Richard Hale I knew was always immaculate. Suits, cufflinks, hair gelled. This man was wearing a loose orange jumpsuit. His hair was white and wild, standing up in tufts. He hadn't shaved in days. He looked old. He looked small. He sat down on the other side of the glass. He picked up the phone. I picked up mine. For a long time, we just looked at each other.
"You look tired," he said.
His voice was raspy, stripped of its booming authority. "I've been busy," I said. "I'm opening a new center for trauma recovery."
He scoffed.
A shadow of his old arrogance flickered across his face. "Trauma. You and your buzzwords. You're capitalizing on this, aren't you? Making a name for yourself." "I'm cleaning up your mess," I said calmly. He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "I made you, Ava. You know that, right? Everything you are. Your discipline. Your focus. Your ability to stand up in front of that crowd and dismantle me without shaking. Where do you think that came from?" He tapped the glass with a dirty fingernail. "I forged you in fire," he said. "I made you strong. If I hadn't been hard on you, you would have been weak. You would have been like your mother." It was his final defense. The last barrier protecting his ego. He needed to believe that his abuse was actually a gift. He needed to believe he was the architect of my success, not the architect of my pain. I looked at him, and I felt a strange sense of pity. Not forgiveness. Never forgiveness. But pity. He was so trapped in his own delusion that he couldn't see the bars he had built around his own soul. "You're right," I said. He blinked, surprised. He hadn't expected agreement. "You did teach me to be strong," I continued. "You taught me how to endure silence. You taught me how to plan. You taught me that the world is a dangerous place and that I need to be ready for anything." I leaned in closer to the glass. "But here's the part you missed, Dad. You taught me to be strong, but you never thought I would use that strength against you." His face fell. The realization hit him. The weapon he had sharpened had turned in his hand. "You created your own downfall," I said. "You didn't raise a daughter. You raised a survivor. And survivors fight back." He didn't say anything after that. He just stared at the table, his hands trembling. The protector was gone. All that was left was a lonely, bitter old man in an orange jumpsuit. I hung up the phone. I stood up. I walked out of the prison and into the sunlight. That was a year ago. My father was convicted on 40 counts of child endangerment and unlawful imprisonment. He was sentenced to 20 years. He will die in prison. The Protector of Children award was rescinded, obviously. The school board was overhauled. The room in the basement was sealed off, and eventually, the school turned it into a brightly lit art supply closet. I didn't go back to my old practice. I couldn't just sit in a chair and listen anymore. I needed to do more. Did I use the money from a book deal? Yes, I wrote a book, and no, I didn't sugarcoat a single thing to open the Hale Advocacy Center. I kept the name. I wanted to reclaim it. I wanted the name, Hale, to mean something else in this town. I wanted it to mean safety, not fear, that we help kids who have slipped through the cracks. We help kids who have been told that their abuse is discipline. We give them a voice. Last week, I received a package in the mail. It was from Chloe. She's 10 now. She's doing better. She's back in school, a different school, and she's seeing a therapist at my center. Inside the package was a drawing that it was a picture of a door. But it wasn't a dark, scary door like the one in the basement. It was painted bright yellow. And it was wide open. Through the doorway, you could see the sun and grass and flowers. At the bottom, in careful crayon letters, she had written, "Thank you for opening the door." That I pinned it to the wall of my office, right next to my diploma. Sometimes, people ask me if I regret doing it the way I did. They ask if I regret the public spectacle, the shame it brought on my family, the destruction of my father's legacy. I look at that drawing. I think about the 23 names on that first list and the 100 names in the logbook. I think about the silence that used to suffocate me, and I tell them the truth that I didn't destroy my father. I didn't destroy his legacy. He built a house of cards on a foundation of suffering. All I did was open a window and let the wind and it has been 5 years since the night of the gala. If you drive past the old elementary school today, you won't see my father's name on the sign anymore. They sandblasted it off the brickwork a week after his arrest. The school has a new principal now, a woman named Mrs. Alvarez who hates silence. She encourages the kids to laugh in the hallways. She turned the basement storage room, that room, into a colorful art supply closet. I'm told it smells like crayons and construction paper now. Not fear that I don't go there, though. I have my own building to worry about. The Hale Advocacy Center sits on a quiet street downtown. It's a renovated house with big bay windows that let in as much light as possible. That was my one non-negotiable requirement for the architect. Light. Everywhere. When you walk in, the first thing you see isn't a trophy case or a plaque listing my degrees. You see a framed drawing of a bright yellow door, wide open to the sun. It's the drawing Chloe sent me. It became our logo. It's a promise. My father is still in prison. He's 72 now. I hear his health is failing. He writes to me occasionally. The letters are always the same, a mix of self-pity and manipulative nostalgia. He talks about legacy and how history will vindicate him. He still believes he was the hero of the story, that I don't read them anymore. I don't burn them, and I don't throw them away. I just file them in a box marked closed cases. It's a clinical, administrative action. It's the ultimate sign of my indifference. He is no longer the monster under my bed. He is just a case study in narcissism. My mother eventually moved to Florida. She sends Christmas cards with generic messages like, "Hope you are well." We are polite strangers. She is trying to live a life where the last 40 years didn't happen, and I am living a life defined by confronting them. We can't bridge that gap, and I've made peace with that, but the real story isn't about him or her. It's about the people who walk through my bright yellow door. David, the mechanic who helped me blow the lid off the whole thing, comes by on Tuesdays. He runs a mentorship program for teenage boys now. He teaches them how to fix cars, but mostly, he teaches them that it's okay to make mistakes. He teaches them that spilling oil or stripping a screw isn't the end of the world. Chloe is 14. She's in high school. She's loud, opinionated, and dyes her hair a different color every month. Last week it was blue. She's brilliant. She wants to be a lawyer. So I can put bad guys away, she told me, popping her gum. She isn't afraid of the dark anymore. And then there's me. For a long time, I thought my life was over the moment I stepped onto that stage. I thought I would always be the daughter. The scandal. The woman who destroyed her own family. But the other day, I was at the grocery store. A woman stopped me in the aisle. She looked familiar. I realized she was one of the mothers from that night at the gala. That I braced myself. I expected her to say something about how I ruined the school's reputation, or how uncomfortable the trial was. Instead, she reached out and touched my arm. "Dr. Hale?" she asked. "Yes," I said.
"My son, he sleeps with the light off now," she said.
Her eyes teared up. Thank you. That's when I knew my father spent his life chasing an award. He wanted a piece of crystal that said protector of children. He wanted the title, the applause, the validation. He thought power was something you hoarded, something you used to make others small so you could feel big. He never understood that you don't win the title of protector. You earn it. You earn it every time you listen. You earn it every time you believe a child over an adult. You earn it when you choose to break the silence, even when it costs you everything. I walked out of the store into the afternoon sun. I took a deep breath. The air was crisp and clean. My name is Dr. Ava Hale. I am my father's daughter, but I am not his masterpiece. I am the open door.